Hey everyone, welcome to the 335th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about Matter being delayed, which we actually delayed talking about because I forgot y'all hadn't heard about it. We're also going to hear about the new Fitbit Charge device, woo woo, for all of us fitness folks out there, and talk about Google's strategy in the fitness realm. We also have Kevin complaining about IoT user interfaces. I shouldn't say complaining. He's really just going to talk about what he thinks. He calls them opportunities. And we've got a new report on OT cybersecurity that actually is surprising for how not scary it is. And Wireless Power Consortium has done a small update to its standard that's worth mentioning. We can't not talk about the Tesla bot, so we will. And there's a smart buoy out there, and I love it. Plus, we're going to review the new Nest Doorbell and Nest Cam gear that came out this week. And our guest this week is Lionel Roberts, who is an associate professor with the University of Michigan, and he has done research on robot personalities. So we're going to talk about what types of personalities your warehouse robot, Boston Dynamics Spot, what should they have? We'll also hear from our sponsor, Silicon Labs, and its Works With event. But first, let us hear from one of our new sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by Infineon, a world leader in semiconductor solutions that makes life easier, safer, and greener. Infineon's chips are shaping everything from the IoT, AI, and Industry 4.0 to deep machine learning and intuitive sensing. The digital transformation is becoming a reality, and the physical world is going to be connected with the virtual world like never before. Infineon is the link between the real world and the digital world. You can learn more about Infineon and its solutions at Infineon.com. Alrighty, Kevin. I feel so bad, y'all. You probably all have heard this, but I'm a completist, so I must tell you. Last week, we should have talked about news that came out the Friday before. That news was exclusive to us. Yay. And it was that Matter, the smart home interoperability standard that y'all all know is Project CHIP, has been delayed. So you probably all know about it by now, but just to rehash.
Maybe not. It was covered, but a lot of people didn't cover it in detail. And you had the exclusive, and you had commentary from the CSA and
the Connectivity Standards Alliance, formerly known as the Zigbee Alliance, that handles the Matter standard. But
that's
basically,
why I just say CSA.
I know. I just have to tell people where they came from.
Okay.
So they're saying that Matter's not going to be out until the first half of 2022. That is the spec itself. We had been anticipating it in fall of this year, which is like right around the corner. And the reasons for that are that basically it's hard to get all of these players to go in the right direction. But two, Matter is pushing out an SDK. They're not just writing up some documentation and then throwing it over the wall. They're actually trying to do an SDK for people so it's easier to implement. And that means it's harder to build. I talked to some people who didn't want to be named because they didn't want to be seen as poo-pooing Matter, but they were like, look, the code is like 2/3 there. This isn't a bad deal. This actually helps smaller developers because Google and Amazon, they have tons of people working on this, right? Those guys are already set to launch their products, but some of the smaller companies, they're really like, well, we got to wait and see what happens. So this gives them more time.
I look at it as a short delay for some long-term gain. I mean, we're going to speed up with an SDK available once it becomes available. So we've got to wait for that SDK. But once that's nailed down, the smaller vendors, as you had said, the other device makers, they can just go to town and start writing their code that's Matter compliant and get their devices in place because all the hard work is done on the back end.
Yeah. And I'm still anticipating that at CES this coming year, we will see companies launch their plans around Matter, but now we've got to wait. Like I was hoping that I could go out and buy stuff, by the middle of next year that were Matter compliant. I'm going to push that out to the holidays at the earliest. So holidays of 2022, possibly into 2023.
I think you're right, but I also wonder because we've seen standards before where people or I should say companies use like a draft version of a standard. I think back to like a lot of routers, pre-802.11n capable and whatnot. So maybe by middle of the year, you might see a couple early outliers, I'm hoping.
Maybe. I mean, I'll hope. And, I'm disappointed, but this is a good thing because we don't want a crappy experience first off. So
right.
That's that. All right. So that's the Matter news from now like 2 weeks ago. I'm so sorry, y'all. And let's talk about something that actually just happened this week, which is the new Fitbit Charge 5 device has launched.
Yeah, there were lots of rumors and renders and leaks, and it is now available for pre-order, shipping by late September. It costs $179.95. It's a one-size deal, so you don't have to pick and choose between different sizes. You just get to choose the colors of the band. It looks nice. It looks like any leaked renders you might have seen of it. The leaks were actually correct. It's got some more smartwatch features, but still, the gist of it is towards exercise and health tracking. And it does have GPS. Not many of the Fitbits have had GPS. It also has some new...
I was just going to say, yeah, I don't know that I need GPS. I feel like that's going to suck the battery and adds to the costs, but that's just me.
No, that's fair. I like GPS because I used to run and it was more accurate than, non-GPS devices. And I also walk every day. And again, I get a better view of everything. So I don't mind it. And to be honest, if it upped the price, they didn't do a bad job, or it's a really cheap GPS sensor because it's only $180. That's not terrible. It is maybe for Fitbit. It's up there.
Yeah, I was going to say my current Fitbit, I think I bought for like $150, $130.
Well, okay, but your current Fitbit, and obviously we know as technology improves, things get better and prices tend to come down in general. Your current Fitbit, does it do sleep? Does it do heart rate variability?
Yes.
Does it now?
It does sleep. It does heart rate. And if I paid for the premium subscription, it would give me heart rate variability. But the last time I paid for the premium subscription, I actually canceled it early because it was just stupid. I canceled the free version of it because I thought it was stupid.
Gotcha. That's pretty bad. At least you get to try it. You don't have the new daily readiness score, even though you've had that on other devices.
That is true. That reminds me of the Whoop band, which Whoop actually is a fitness tracker for, I think it's super hardcore. I did a review on it. I was like, I am not hardcore enough for this device. But what it does is it uses heart rate variability as a means to track how much you should work out for the day based on the sleep, your stress levels, all of this. And so this sounds exactly like Whoop's, I don't know what they call it. I can't remember what they call it, but that's their selling point. And it was really interesting. It was really compelling to work out against that, even if I could not achieve like the levels they wanted me to achieve.
I've had that on my Garmin Forerunner in the past when I use that. And it is very helpful because it's basically telling me your body needs X amount of time to recover based on what you just did. So it's a very data-driven feature, which, I mean, if you're going to collect all this data, let's use it.
Yeah. And there's been a couple times when I found heart rate variability to be an interesting metric for me. Like, I do have a really terrible time sleeping. And I noticed this with the Whoop, and everyone talks about this. Alcohol really messes with that. So for a time there, I either wouldn't drink or I'd feel so guilty when I drank related to my fitness. So if that's something that you're working on, maybe dry January, you just track this on and you're going to be like, yeah, this is all worth it.
You know, I'm doing dry 2021. So
that's not a bad idea.
I know. You know what else is not a bad idea? Being able to measure your skin temperature, being able to use Fitbit Pay because there's NFC in there, and that's not typically and not often.
Yeah. I think they had it in their fancy big watch, and I'm glad this keeps the smaller form factor.
Right.
Because, yeah, the Versa watch that they had I didn't do it for me.
One of the interesting aspects that's not here, I don't see anything in the press release or on the product page mentioning any app integrations for this. And we were kind of thinking, well, what about Google Fit, since Google now owns Fitbit? But even the daily readiness score, which I think is, you have to pay the premium to get it, it's in the Fitbit app as based on what they're showing us.
Yeah.
So there's no movement there.
And here's my deal. My Fitbit is on me all the time. Google Fit, I picked it up and started using it because I was doing the sleep tracking with the Nest Hub Display Gen 2 or whatever. I don't know. So I was using Google Fit, and I don't like it because I don't carry my phone everywhere with me. Like sometimes when I go out on a walk with the dog, I forget the phone because I don't have pockets. I know not everybody's like me, but that aggravated me. And then I have things like my Nike Fit Club integrates with Google Fit, but it doesn't integrate with Fitbit. So now I'm sitting here. Fitbit is my primary focus, but Google Fit is just like this extra incomplete, stupid thing. So I just need them to like
get the integrations and pick one, and that way you can migrate or do whatever. Yeah, I've been in that. I call it integration hell for the better part of 10 years and just did away with it when I went to the Apple Watch because it does integrate with all the running apps. I must have running data in 6 different apps, and some work with some things, some work with other things. And I even paid for services that would take non-supported integrations and do the integration for me because somebody wrote scripts to and reverse engineered things. I don't have to do that anymore. And I'm so glad because it's integration hell.
Yeah, it's silly. And we still don't know what's going on with Google. And, they did disband their health division, which I don't believe this is part of that, although they've been focused on like wellness. So I'm just like, Google, what's happening? I know. Why would we ask Google these things? This is a company that has like 3 different types of chat.
Because it's constantly adding and removing products and things. And it's a big part of people's ecosystem for their smart homes and their phones, and therefore it makes logical sense that they'd be on the ball here when it comes to the health and the smartwatches and whatnot, but they're not. And in fact, our next story kind of is just going to underscore it more because the Galaxy Watch 4 event took place. I watched it. We talked about the watch itself a week or 2 ago on the podcast, and now all the video reviews are out, and every one of them agrees on one thing.
What is that thing, Kevin?
Well, Samsung, we knew, is working with Google to integrate their Tizen wearable platform with Google's Wear OS. And we also know that Fitbit is, as we just said, getting integrated. This is still a mishmash of interfaces because all the Google apps are there, but many of them are replicated by Samsung apps. And they do work with non-Galaxy phones, because for a while, the Galaxy Watches only work with Galaxy phones, but now any Android phone can use these, but you have to install a Samsung Galaxy Watch app and a Samsung Galaxy or Samsung Health and so many other things. So again, it's all this duplication because of what we just said. Google has not done the integration process yet.
Sigh.
So even if I was an Android user, and if you're an iPhone user, you're not going to want to use this because you're going to miss features that Apple locks down. Even if I was an Android user, maybe if I was a Galaxy owner, maybe I would do this, but be prepared for that mishmash experience.
Boo.
Yeah.
Is this a challenge or is it an opportunity? Speaking of mishmashes.
I'm going to call it an opportunity because things I don't like aren't problems, they're opportunities. And Stacey is laughing right now because before the show, she wanted me to really pick out smart home interfaces that suck. And I didn't want to do it.
Because you're so kind. But why are we talking about smart home interfaces today, Kevin?
That's a good point because this is a very different topic in a way for us, the way we've approached it. And the reason we're doing it this way is because my classes at Georgia Tech just started for my master's in comp sci this past week. And I'm taking one and only one class, and it happens to be Human-Computer Interaction, or HCI. And granted, we're only a few days in, but oh my goodness, I'm learning so much about interfaces and user interface design and user experiences that I already applied it or reflected upon it as it relates to IoT devices. And I see 3 big opportunities for IoT device makers when it comes to human-computer interaction. The first one, IoT devices, interfaces in general are often designed not for you, but for someone else because they're designed in-house and often by engineers who think things should work a certain way. This is the functionality. Here's how you do it. But that's not the best way to design interfaces. The best way would be to have user interface people design the interface, and then try them out with actual users to see how the users respond. There's psychology involved. There's observation involved. And then there's a feedback loop that should happen. Get feedback on what works, what doesn't, and change the interface so that it works the way the users expect it to. And in a lot of IoT devices, that hasn't been the case. I look back to LG's WebOS smart TV interface, and it's poop. And I'm being polite here. Samsung SmartThings, they've revamped theirs recently. Why? Because the first one wasn't that great. I mean, why would you revamp it otherwise? I mean, it was okay. I look at some that are better than others.
So what do you think companies should do?
So if they're using engineers to design interfaces, that they should stop. They should migrate away from that. Functionality, that's going to come from your engineers. But when it comes to the end user that has to accomplish something with that functionality, complete a task, the interface shouldn't even be there. They shouldn't be thinking about the interface. They should be thinking about what they want to accomplish. I want to turn my smart lights on. I want to do this. I want to hear this music, etc. So that's number one. Number two, they should look at opportunities to push beyond just the controlling aspects of interfaces, meaning we use interfaces to make things happen. That's great. But that's the bare bones minimum. Interfaces can actually change behavior if they're designed right. And a perfect example is the emails that I get from Ecobee. They tell me after the fact that I used too much energy or I could have saved energy by doing this. Well, it's too late. The month is already over. So why not go beyond an interface that just has controls and say, I've got real-time data here, and compared to all the other Ecobee people, you're using 25% more energy. Here's a little red indicator that will alert you to that. Make that surface in the interface and in real time.
I like it.
That would be the second thing. And then the third thing, and we haven't talked about it yet in class, but I hope we do, is voice interfaces. I had said 10 years ago that Siri brings about the invisible interface because pretty much everybody in the world can speak. Not everybody, but most everybody. But yet we're still leaning too heavily on the platforms. Everybody's glomming on to the Siris, the Madam A's, the Google Home. And there's no extra value add being provided by the device makers when I think there could be. I don't know yet what I'd like to see them do, but I think there's opportunity there and they should be thinking about it because I don't think they're thinking about it right now because it's being handled for them.
Got it. All right. Well, Kevin, we'll see. And we'll see as you learn more stuff. What else?
Hopefully I do learn more stuff.
What else you look at and you're like, oh, we could do better. There could be opportunities here.
Do you love all your smart home and car interfaces and appliance interfaces?
I honestly don't use a lot of the apps. I rid myself of the apps because for me, I want it to be automated or I want it to be easier. So I don't love the feedback interfaces on the voice side. A lot of times when I ask a question or if I'm asking for a light to turn on, I don't want to be told, I just turned off the kitchen table lamp. I just want it to go bink. I heard you and I'm turning off. And Google's addressed that. So is, Amazon. So yeah.
We both have a product that I think needs at least one UI tweak. We both have a June oven.
Oh, yes, we do. What's the UI tweak?
I'm going to ask you.
I know what it is.
Okay, let's see if it's the same thing. This is interesting. Go ahead.
Okay, so when you put something in, like if I want to make toast, I put it in, it's like, is this bread? And I'm like, I hit that button. And then it's
you hit the bread button.
I hit the bread button. And then it gives me all the instructions for how to best cook this. But I cook bread every day in that oven. And I would like to skip those because then it's like 2 extra presses.
Exactly. And for me, it's toaster strudel, but it's the same thing. I know that there's only one way to cook these. You know how to do it. I know how to do it. Just do it.
Yeah, because they've gotten better. If you pull something out early or add more time, it'll ask you if it wants to remember.
Correct. And that works well because the 4.5 or 5 minutes of my toaster strudel is sometimes not enough. So I'm like, put it in for another 30 seconds. And it says, do you want me to remember that? Yes, it does. And now it does it for the extra 30 seconds by default.
Yes, so it has the ability to hold this information in its little computer brain. Yes, I'm with you. Okay, look.
See?
Hey, June, take a note. Take a memo. Now it's Weber. Hey, Weber.
Are you happy? I called somebody out.
There you go. Thank you, Kevin. You're an welcome. Opportunity, Weber. All right, let's talk about OT security, or the lack of it. OT stands for operational technology. It's the technology that makes your plants run. It's the sensors that actually do the driving in your car, not the infotainment stuff. This is the stuff that actually makes things work. We talk a lot about it in the industrial IoT because honestly, it's the scariest, most important part. It used to be all air-gapped. Things were not online, but now things are not really air-gapped. You might think they are, but they're not really air-gapped. So when we're talking about OT, Honeywell actually just put out a report on OT security, and the results were not surprising. 71% of the facility managers surveyed considered OT security a concern or worry. But, and here's where I think people are lying.
Talk about calling out.
Only 1 in 4 surveyed facility managers have said they've experienced a cyber breach of their OT systems in the last year. I feel like the other 3/4 are probably lying. Only 44% of respondents currently have a cybersecurity solution in place to protect their OT systems from potential threats. I'm curious how many are actually monitoring. If protection and monitoring, those are not necessarily the same thing. This is why I don't believe the 3 in 4 who don't think they've been attacked. And only 1/3 of people plan to invest in OT cybersecurity products going forward in the next 12 to 18 months. I feel like given the way the laws are going, NIST standards are happening, I feel like that's going to be a lot higher. But that's the results of that survey. I will link to it so you can see it. It's pretty demoralizing, I would say. Switching gears, we also have news from the Wireless Power Consortium. These are the people who do the Qi wireless standard. Yay, Qi. And they've done a minor update. And this update is basically, it's not faster charging or more charging. The two things of note here is that they're going to do some authentication associated with wireless charging devices. And then over 100 devices, 100 Qi devices are being certified every month, which is crazy talk.
That's a lot of Qi.
That's a lot of Qi. So this security move, Kevin actually has a really good example of why you might want better authentication.
Yeah, so I could see why device makers would want it. Somebody's actually created this in the past. When Google came out with the Pixel stand, which is the wireless charging stand for its Pixel phones, I think about 2 years ago, there was a feature that when you put the phone on the stand, it would automatically show your photos, kind of like a screensaver. That feature only worked with certain Pixel phones. You could still wirelessly charge any other phone, but that particular feature would just work with Pixel. So Google created some value add there by making some type of authentication process that said, hey, wireless charger, this is a Pixel phone and I can do this. Please do it. Whereas no other phones could do it. So now device makers could take advantage of that and do these value add features with a standard as opposed to creating it in-house.
Right. So you're not like charging your phone at your friend's house and your photos are showing up on their screen.
Right. You'd have a different user experience with the same device. Ta-da.
All right. And now it's the part of the show where we talk about things that aren't real. Let's talk about Tesla's imaginary robot.
So I would imagine most people have heard about this or seen it. Tesla showed off what they called the Tesla bot that they're working on. And it came walking on the stage. And then everybody realized it wasn't a robot because it started dancing because there was actually a human wearing a robot suit, essentially. So maybe your kids want to be Tesla bots this Halloween. I don't know. Regardless of the silliness of that and the fact that this doesn't exist, Tesla is working on it. And that has me excited, probably more so than Stacy, only because I really do want a mobile robot to handle the things that Elon says the Tesla bot would handle, silly little chores and tasks that don't require me to be doing them anymore. I mean, that's why I bought a Roomba. I don't need to vacuum anymore. My wife is thrilled with it, but I want more than just a single purpose bot.
Right. You want a bot with hands that can unload your dishwasher.
Yeah. So I can do high fives when I, do something good in school, and maybe you can go get the mail.
My eyes could not roll back any farther in my head.
I saw that.
It's just so.
As I said, Stacy may not be as excited about this as me.
I think this is just it's either a giant prank or it is just like Tesla has some real issues with autopilot and safety regulations and the fact that it's very hard to build a self-driving car for reasons actually our guest will talk about. So the Tesla bot to me is just like...
It's healthy skepticism, yes.
It's not even healthy skepticism. It's like, if someone popped up on the stage and said the earth is flat. That's how I feel. I feel like he's insulting all of us.
And you drive a Tesla.
I do. I'm a big fan of the Tesla, but we all know how hard it is to build. Actually, it's not even to build the robot. It's to program the robot to do these sorts of tasks. I mean, there are engineers at Toyota. There are engineers at NVIDIA. I've seen robots that are trained to do normal household tasks. I've seen the amount of compute those things require, the amount of programming, the types of learning. This is not something that's real.
Not yet.
I am offended by this concept. But
ouch.
We shall move on.
Okay.
Let's talk about things that don't offend me. Let's talk about the new gear from Nest. So Google's Nest division. We actually talked about this when it launched a couple weeks ago, but this week you could now buy the Nest Doorbell that has a battery in it, so you can either wire it or you don't have to, or the new indoor-outdoor Nest Cam that also can run on a battery. And each of these devices is available now for $179.99, and they're fine.
Stacy's review. They're fine.
No, I want to be more excited about this. Okay. So here's what I'm excited about. The doorbell is freaking gorgeous. The image quality, amazing. The field of view, very compelling. The installation's like every other doorbell that you will have to install. It's really easy if you're on a wood house and you have the spots, either wired or wireless. I have mine running wireless and it's been up for a couple days. It's losing about... Part of it is these days were testing days, which means I'm using it more than it normally would. So during high usage, like 10 doorbells a day, it was losing about 2% of battery a day. And it's not super warm out here, but it's not super cold. It's like the lows are in the 50s. So
yeah, come wintertime, you're going to see a bigger drain.
Right. But it's very nice. I mean, it's very pretty. At $179.99, it's priced right within the sweet spot for doorbells. And if you're in the Google ecosystem, this is a no-brainer. This sends data directly to your Google displays and your phone within like 3 seconds. You can use the display or your phone to talk to people outside.
That brings up a little gotcha.
But you need to pay for a subscription. And the reason you would do this, well, actually, you don't have to, but it's only going to give you 3 hours of video data. If you're there all the time with your phone on you and, you only care about package theft, then this is probably fine, right? But after 3 hours, it all erases. So it's all gone.
That's one thing. I was actually thinking of a different gotcha.
Oh, okay. What's your gotcha?
If you have no wires and you go for this because it's wireless and you use the battery, there's no way currently that I know of to use a chime with it, meaning you're relying completely on your Google speakers, displays, and phone for when the doorbell rings.
Yes. And to be clear, if you have like an Apple phone, the app will work on your Apple phone and it will ring to your phone still. But yeah, there's no external chime. Google is launching accessories for all of these devices. I fully expect a chime to be one of those accessories, but right now it's not there. So that is an issue if you're into that.
It works if you're wired, though.
Yes. If you're wired, well, it works if you're wired and you're wired to a chime.
Correct. Yeah.
So some homes are wired, but there's still no chime or the chime doesn't work, which I've discovered happens a surprising amount of time, especially in older homes. So yeah, it's a good doorbell. I was kind of miffed about the subscription. I would rather not pay for a subscription for a video doorbell. I think a 24-hour time period is probably nicer, or even 12 that gets you through the night. But whatever. The other aspect of this and the Nest Cam is that there's a lot of AI features. And with the subscription, you get more. You get things like familiar faces. But even without a subscription, like I've got all these notifications like a package has arrived, a package has been removed. And those are very nice. They help you like know why your doorbell is pinging you, notifying you, right? They're like a person has arrived. With the Nest Cam, so that's the doorbell, and many of those features carry over to the Nest Cam. The Nest Cam is a substantial camera. This guy is a chunker, man. And like many indoor, outdoor cameras, it's got a magnetic base. You mount the base to whatever you want to mount it to, and then you just hook the camera to it. And the image quality, again, is good. The field of view is only 130 degrees. Some of the more expensive indoor, outdoor cameras, like from Arlo, they have 180-degree field of view. So you're looking at a slightly more limited field of view, but you can talk to, people through both the doorbell and the camera. The image quality is very good. The night quality on both of these is very good. I do have a quibble. I actually set up my camera to detect my dog. I wanted it because it can detect one of the AI features. The classes of creatures it detects are animals or pets. But so far, it is not registering my dog at all. And it's kind of a shame because I have it on my doggy door because I was like, I wonder if my dog goes out at night. So I'm still trying to figure out what's happening there. I'll let y'all know when I do. But yeah, those are the devices. If you're in a Google ecosystem and need these things, great. I will also say that if you're waiting for Matter to buy any of these things, don't worry about that because video cameras are not part of the Matter standard going forward. So you've got plenty of time to don't even worry. Matter is not something you should think about in this particular situation with these devices.
So go spend your money.
Or not. I mean,
or not.
Again, this is for people in Google Homes.
Agreed. Yep.
If you're an Amazon Echo Home, these are not the devices for you. They're pretty, but they're not going to work as seamlessly with the Amazon devices. So, boo. Okay, that is that. Now, it is time for the Iot Podcast Hotline. This is the part of the show where we listen to you. And right now, we're not hearing from a lot of you. I know you're on vacation, but give us a call at 512-623-7424 because, one, you'll be entered to win the smart speaker of your choice. And two, my gosh, y'all.
I'm starting to take it personally.
I am. I'm a little hurt. Come up with some questions. And by the way, when you give us a question, include as many details. So if you're asking about a smart bulb, let us know what kind of smart bulb it is. Those kind of things really actually do help us a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I should mention that right now, the Iot Podcast Hotline is sponsored by Very. Very is a fully distributed IoT engineering firm that partners with clients to build systems for smart manufacturing, smart energy and utilities, consumer electronics, and connected wellness. You should discover what Very's multidisciplinary teams can do for you at www.verypossible.com/services. Okay, this week's question comes from Brent, who actually sent us a question last month that we used. So you might be familiar with Brent. Let's hear it.
Hello, this is Brent from Utah, and I am just wanting to know if there's a better way to do things. I get into bed, maybe read a little bit, and then I'm ready for the light to go off, but I'm reading on my iPad, not on my phone. The phone's on the charger away from me. And I could use my cute word and try to get Google to turn off my light, which it probably won't. But I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if there were a switch that you could use to turn off the light? Maybe a button. Could be a switch. But something that didn't require my phone and didn't require my voice. Can you help me with that?
Oh, Brent, I have this exact setup. My first response, and this is actually everyone's first response when I tell them this is my setup, they're like, there is literally a smart button on your lamp. It just turns it on and off. But Brent, I'm going to assume you're like me and you've got the bulb and you don't want to mess with that. So, or the,
I don't want to get out of bed to turn my light off either. I get it.
I have to stretch a little far to turn my lamp off at the switch. I'll be honest. So this is why I have a tiny little button. And this is what you're going to need. You're going to need a smart button, Brent. And my button is a Philips Hue smart button that costs $24.99 and works with the Philips Hue bulb that I have in my bedside table lamp. I also have it in my husband's bedside table lamp, and I use it with like one click. We turn both of them off, and with one click or two clicks or double click, I turn mine off. Or maybe I have it opposite. Either way, it works really well. Nobody has to talk, and nobody has to touch a phone. And the button clicking is very satisfying. But if you don't have Philips Hue, it's kind of an expensive solution for you because you got to buy the hub, you got to buy the bulbs, you got to buy the button. So if you have some other bulb, my recommendation is to look at the Flick, F-L-I-C buttons. They do a lot. A single Flick button is $30. They also have a button and hub set. And I know Kevin is rolling his eyes at the idea of a hub right now.
Using one of my outlets.
But the hub is the hub plus button set is $159.99, which is a lot. But then you get additional buttons to do things with. And the Flick buttons are just fun. You can connect them via the hub, so then they'll work on your Wi-Fi, or you can connect them directly to your phone and use them to set off processes on your phone. So it's possible. I don't know what light bulb you're using. I don't know what phone you have. I don't know any of this, that you could actually just buy the button and trigger the app to run from your phone using the button, which means you wouldn't need the hub because it'd all be locally happening in your room.
Similarly, I mean, again, we don't know the setup, but I mean, if the lamp is tied to an actual switch and that's a smart switch rather than a smart bulb, there are buttons out there that can do this as well. But, you have to look and see what you have. Do you have a hub? Do you need a hub? You have to make sure that you can support it. So I'm throwing it out there as a very generic, think about this as well, because if that's your setup, that's still an option.
True. And this is just
or
just to add another wrinkle, because you mentioned switches, and I was like, oh yeah, you could use a Pico remote. The other thing that you might be willing to do, maybe, you would have to take the smart bulb out, but you could use something like a Lutron outlet and then get a Pico remote, because I love Lutron. I'm just going to throw it in there. So get yourself the dimmer module that plugs into your lamps. It'll turn your lamp into a dimmable lamp, and it connects it to the, HomeKit, Madame, Google, whatever you want. And you can buy a Pico remote that sits by your bed, and you click it up and down for what you want. So there's some options there for you, Brent. They all involve you buying new things. But the number of new things you have to buy is up to you. All right. So if you would like us to answer your questions, and the level of detail we can offer is going to be based on how much we know about your setup, give us a call at 512-623-7424, and you will also be entered to win a smart speaker of your choice. All righty. That concludes the news portion of the show. Please stay tuned for our guest, Lionel Roberts from the University of Michigan. He's going to be talking about what kind of personalities we want our robots to have and how to build robots that interact better with humans. It's going to be super fun. Y'all are going to love it. And now let's hear from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Silicon Labs. Hey everyone, we are taking a break this week from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Silicon Labs, and please welcome Matt Johnson, who is currently president at Silicon Labs and the future CEO starting in 2022. Today, Matt is going to talk to us about Works With, Silicon Labs' virtual IoT conference that is coming up in mid-September. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Stacy. It's great to be back.
So, for those of y'all who don't know Silicon Labs, please give us a brief introduction.
Silicon Labs is a leader, simply put, in wireless solutions for the IoT. We serve tens of thousands of customers, thousands of applications, and over 100 different technologies and ecosystems in our space. So nowhere else does this breadth or depth exist for wireless IoT solutions. And as of last month, this is the only thing that we do. We are now 100% focused on the IoT. We divested all of our non-IoT business for almost $3 billion, so we can focus just on this because we see so much opportunity here.
This is going to be the second year Silicon Labs is hosting Works With. Can you tell me a little bit about the event and what attendees can expect?
Absolutely. So Works With is a unique event in our industry where we bring the IoT space together. Last year, we had over 6,000 attendees, and we expect even more this year. So this is developers, ecosystem partners, device makers, and alliances coming together to share, learn, and collaborate. So this year, it's a virtual event. There's no charge, and we'll be on September 14th and 15th. So it's a great opportunity if you're looking to learn more about smart home, smart city, industrial applications, or if you're just simply looking how to go faster in your product development. This is a great opportunity for all those things. We decided to break it up this year into 4 tracks. One will be smart homes, the other smart cities, industrial IoT, and then general IoT. And we thought this would be a good way to compartmentalize because there's a lot of similarity, but there's also a lot of unique needs in each of these areas. Last year's keynotes, we had Amazon, Comcast, and Google, and we're expecting them to be just as exciting this year. And we also added a keynote session this year specifically for our Asian time zones that will feature LifeSmart, Tuya, and Tencent. We also have some great panels planned. Just a few examples. We have an alliance panel where we'll have our standards and alliances all together talking about openly the future of each and how they all work together. And we have a security panel where we have Amazon, IBM, and IOXT together to talk about challenges in the future of security in the IoT space. And Stacy, the panel you're hosting on how the IoT is changing healthcare is going to be great. And I know you're going to be talking more about that later.
All right. And where can our listeners go to find out more about the event?
So registration is at workswith.scilabs.com. And this event is on September 14th and 15th. It's virtual and there's no fee for registration. So looking forward to seeing you all there.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and today's guest is Lionel Roberts, who is on the faculty of the University of Michigan Robotics Institute and an associate professor at their School of Information. Hello, Lionel. How are you today?
Great. How's it going?
It's going so well, and I am really excited to talk to you because you have been doing, I'm just going to call it excellent research. I have no academic credentials here, but excellent research on robots, their personality, and how people react when robots make a mistake. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. And can you just quickly just tell us, like, what your interest, like, how did you come about to this topic?
Yeah, and I started off really looking at collaboration between humans. And it was collaboration between humans that engage in collaboration in online environments. And so we knew a lot about human-to-human collaboration in face-to-face environments, and I was interested in seeing how things change when humans basically collaborated online through video, chat. And then I noticed maybe about 5-6 years ago that what was becoming important is humans collaborating not just through technology with other humans, but humans collaborating with technology. All of a sudden, we started seeing the possibility of robots becoming teammates. And I was interested because we know something, for example, like trust is very important when humans engage in collaboration. And I wondered if you replace one of those humans with a robot, would trust still be important? And if it was, even then, would it be important in a different way? And so I became very fascinated about the study of human and robot collaboration.
Excellent. And so you've worked with a grad student, Connor Esterwood. Y'all have discovered very briefly, your most recent paper talks about, I guess, robotic-looking robots versus human-looking robots. And what did you discover?
So in that paper, we looked at the ways that humans can repair trust with robots. So the idea is that robots, if we're going to place them in realistic environments, they have to learn. And learning means making mistakes. When you make mistakes, you sort of lose trust in your collaborator. And so we were studying to what degree that we could come up with various approaches so that robots could repair trust when they make a mistake working with a human. And so we looked at things like if the robot apologized or if the robot explained what happened. And our main goal was to see, one, which of these approaches were most effective. And so we looked at apology, denial, explanation, and promise to do better. And then we also manipulated the degree of humanness associated with the robot. So we discovered, for example, if the robot resembled a human, something like an explanation when they made a mistake was very effective. And it was less so effective if the robot was a mechanical-looking robot. And at the same token, we discovered something like promise to do better was actually more effective at repairing trust for a mechanical-looking robot than a human-looking robot. So that was very interesting.
Oh, I will remember that when I'm being chased down by Boston Dynamics frightening robot. All right. And before we go too much deeper, I want to ask you what you think a robot is. Like, how should we be defining a robot? Because I feel like in my home, I've got, my little Roomba vacuum cleaner running around. I also have Madam A, my Amazon digital assistant, and my Google digital assistant, and I have my Nest thermostat. So I've got all of these devices that might be robots. How should we be thinking about this?
Yeah, so first of all, it's not an easy question. Turns out people have debates about this. If you're not careful, your toaster may turn out to be a robot, right? So it's not an easy question. So what we do typically at the University of Michigan and the Robotics Institute, a robot needs to be able to, on one hand, perceive information, process it, think, respond. But on the other hand, it also needs to have a physical presence. So in the case of maybe your Alexa, it would probably be more of an AI system because an AI system can do everything a robot can do except respond in the physical environment. So we tend to require whatever it is has to have a physical body and be able to respond in physical space. So your vacuum cleaner would qualify as a robot, and your Alexa would not if you use that definition.
Now I'm wondering about my toaster. My toaster is actually a smart oven that takes action based on what it sees from a graphics chip and a camera inside there. It's like, oh, your food is, it cooks my food based on feedback within the oven. Is there a robot? It's taking physical action.
It would probably qualify in a very generic definition of a robot. It becomes very difficult to come up with a reasonable definition of robot that won't allow that toaster to fall within the category of being a robot.
Fun. I love it. I mean, you probably hate it, but I think it's great. I'm like, oh. So this is interesting because I was thinking about my digital assistants make mistakes all the time. So do you think your research into mistakes or even robot personalities applies to those types of things, or are they so fundamentally different?
No, I think they apply because what you're talking about in that case is the sort of cognitive aspect of the technology. And so from that standpoint, I think they would definitely apply. I think when robots become unique is that you have this kinematics or the study of motion, and that becomes a part of understanding robots in a way that is not necessarily a part of, let's say, studying Alexa, for example.
Got it. And, most people, I'm trying to think about, there's my Roomba and I associate personality with it. I anthropomorphize my Roomba. Its name is Terrence, for example. And I don't know what factory workers who work next to, robots do, but when people are designing robots to interact with people, are they thinking about personality at all, do you think?
Yeah, I think they have to be now. And let me explain why. So typically, we know that for the last 25, 30 years of organizational science, that people may get a job because they need the money, but people stay at work because they enjoy the interaction with the people at work. And so when you begin to replace some of those people with robots, you don't replace those social interactions, people are not going to want to stay at work. Right? This is a big problem now. That's the one missing element when people are working with robots is that if you don't find a way to replace or supplement or substitute those social interactions they had with their coworker humans, then people are going to leave, right? And so that means designing robots to be very social. And so that means they have to consider the personality of the human and the robot and try to find ways to, in some cases, the work I'm doing, find out how to design robots with a personality that will help people, encourage people to trust them, to enjoy interacting with them. That's an unavoidable issue that has to be addressed if you want people to work day to day with robots.
All right. Well, let's talk about the type of personality we want from our robots. And you've made a distinction in your research between robots that look like people and robots that look like robots. I'm I'm thinking of like a pick and place machine or a little painting arm or something like that.
So exactly.
So run me through settings because, we're seeing robots in the home, in healthcare settings. They're obviously in industrial. So let's look at those three settings and pick what personality traits might be important. Or maybe it's the same personality traits for all, but what matters in each of those settings for each of those types of robots?
So there's two things that we found that matters at least. So one thing, according to the literature we've looked at and done ourselves, people tend to like robots that have a similar personality as them. So if we're going to assess the human's personality and match the robot personality to the human, humans tend to enjoy more interacting with that robot. Now, there are some exceptions, and that becomes the second issue. It depends on the role of the robot. So if the robot is, let's say, a tour guide, people prefer a robot or a tour guide that has an outgoing personality. We call it extrovert, right? So people want the robot that has a job as a tour guide to be more extroverted. So there's this case where, given a role, people have an expectation of what the robot personality should be. But short of that, people tend to want and prefer a robot that has the same personality as they do.
Oh, is it hard to program a personality into a robot? I'm like, that's kind of both creepy if you think about like, oh, I work next to this robot every day. And you know, when you hire someone, you give them a personality test and then give the robot a personality transplant. That's crazy, right?
No, it's pretty realistic, right? So imagine, and it's not just personality. So think about this. Let's imagine you are a Yankees fan. Well, you know, it would help if your robot was a Yankees fan. It probably wouldn't help if your robot was a Red Sox fan, right? So all these things that, you know, when these companies do these hiring, they give their employees all these tests. They can use that, all right? And we can manipulate the robot's voice and actions and name, even gender. We've done studies where we basically have a robot given it what you might consider a female name and a female voice versus a male name and a male voice. And you can create a persona or a personality of robot that your human prefers to interact with.
I love this idea. I'm trying to think about how this plays out in how we treat robots, because there is a lot of indication that we're going to be spending more time working with robots. So do we want to be treating them like our friends, or should we be like, this is a debate with smart home devices, like children treating, you know, Madam A like a slave or a servant. So what do you think about like how we interact with them and how their personalities influence that? Should we think about that at all?
Yeah, we should. It's a big debate. Some people will say that we should design robots to discourage humanization of them, right? So that we should design them so that people don't see them as humans and should go out of our way to do that. So maybe that Roomba vacuum cleaner is a great example. That thing is probably not designed to encourage a lot of anthropomorphism, but I mean, humans still do that, right? But you can imagine it could be designed differently if they wanted to encourage that. But on the other hand, people are going to say, when you work with a robot, imagine if you could work with a robot that resembles a human, looks pretty nice, sounded nice, and, you know, polite and engaged. Or you have to work with a robot that, let's say, was a mechanical arm, right? That over a course of time, that you would probably prefer the robot that looked more human. And here's a big problem. You would probably build a stronger emotional bond with that robot. And as a result of it, you would trust it more and enjoy working with it more. Now, on one hand, that's good because you would prefer going to work. You would actually go to work and you would enjoy going to work. You really would. On the other hand, people are going to say that that robot is not a person. Robot is not your friend, right? You know, with a coworker friend, you tell your coworker friend things that you don't want your boss to know. But that robot, it has a camera and a recording, and everything you say to it, your boss will hear. And it's not, I mean, and then, you know, the debate is, you know, it's a robot. It cannot like you back. Right. The idea is that you could pretend to have this bond with this thing, but it will not be reciprocal. And that's a problem that we should discourage. And so there's always this debate because at least in the short run, people trust and interact robots that we design to be more social. And then there's debate about the implications for that human and society in the long run.
Yeah, we do go to great lengths to make things feel more friendly and human to us. So that's interesting. Now I'd like to play a little game. I'm going to offer up some robots, and please tell me what personality you think would be most appropriate for them. I'm going to bring up my nightmare robot, Boston Dynamics, the Spot dog-shaped robot. What kind of personality should we be looking for that?
It would really depend on the circumstance. So, for example, if you wanted what they wanted to do at New York City, where they wanted to deploy that, let's say, into the general public, then you would want to make it a nice, friendly personality, right? You would want to encourage people to look at it, to feel comfortable with it walking around. Now, let's suppose you wanted to deploy that robot into a house that has, let's say, several armed criminals. At that point, you want that robotic dog to be scary, right? You may want it to discourage, action toward it. And so the problem they have in New York with that robotic dog is you need both, and that's difficult because if you were going to design it to be friendly and nice with a warm personality, you probably wouldn't have it look the way it does. Right. And so automatically with that look at that robotic dog, looks pretty scary. You have to do a lot of work to overcome that initial look, the way it moves, the way it walks. You have to do a lot to sort of like disarm people and get people to like it. So personality is going to be very difficult to overcome the way that thing's designed. On the other hand, you have to because it's, any personality that's, say, neutral will probably still seem very scary. Yeah.
That dog definitely has some I can't say it, RBF. Okay, what about Elon Musk last week announced that Tesla was working on a humanoid robot to help people around the home. What kind of robot personality should we look for there?
You want one that's friendly, conscientious, emotionally stable, so people depend on it. People trust it. People feel comfortable around it. So I would say agreeableness and openness. So robot is pretty open, very inclusive, and that can come in the language. Openness can be displayed in the languages and its knowledge of what it knows, how to respond to people, how it treats people. But you want one that's probably caring, benevolent, something that's very friendly and encouraging. You want people to be comfortable when it's next to them.
All right. And I don't have a famous robot example for this, but let's go with a new robotic arm for an Amazon warehouse.
Yes, interesting. So I actually had a debate with someone over this. So on one hand, this is kind of funny, but on one hand, I was talking to a professor who's actually designing these robotic arms. And his students really wanted this arm to basically be able to talk, right? And I would say more extroverted, right? It could talk, it could do all these wonderful things. But older people were like, you got to be kidding me. I don't want an arm that can talk, right? So on one hand, if it was, I would say if you're working with maybe older workers, you would probably want it to be subdued. You almost probably want it to be not to have a whole lot of a personality, right? So people would see it. Many people would think a robotic arm with a extroverted personality, an outgoing personality, would be uncanny, right? They might think that's pretty scary. If you wanted something to be outgoing, you wouldn't make it a robotic arm. I would say for that one, it would have to be more introverted, more subdued. It may talk just a little, and maybe when it did talk, it didn't sound like a human.
Okay, so clearly a robot, not too chatty. I like it. All right. Going forward, we hear a lot, the debate over increasing robotics in our lives is very much colored by the fact that we worry about people losing their jobs. So I would love to get your take on how we should envision the future. Are we going to work next to robots every day in our lives? Are they going to be traveling our streets as little delivery robots and we go to the factory with them next to us? Or are we going to just have this incredible life of leisure because the robots are doing everything? What does that future, do you think, realistically look like?
Yeah, realistically, it's going to be an integrated, coherent workforce of humans and robots. And here's why. Robots are really great at doing the same thing over again and really good at physical tasks. On the other hand, robots are not very good at creative tasks, novel tasks. They're not very ad hoc or fluid. Humans are incredibly great at creative tasks, changes in the environment, problem solving on the fly. So ultimately, in the future workforce, we're going to have both humans and robots working together in a collaboration. So you get the best of both worlds. Now, what does that mean for jobs? It means that the humans that are creative, that have all these soft skills that can change, are going to have jobs. They're going to have more jobs and better pay. Unfortunately, it also means that the humans that do jobs that are simple, repetitive, are going to have less jobs. And if they have a job, it'll be for less pay.
This makes sense. Okay, well, Lionel, thank you so much for coming on the show this week. This was super fun and interesting.
Thank you for having me.
And that concludes this week's episode of the Internet of Things podcast. Please join us next Thursday and don't forget to subscribe. And if you can't get enough IoT news, I would love for you to sign up at www.stacyoniot.com for our weekly IoT newsletter, where we explain all kinds of things that we don't even get to on the show. Once again, thank you for listening and please subscribe.